in our Common Ground segment, we talked to two members of the House Armed Services Committee and the Select China Committees, Democrat Congressman Khanna of California and Republican Congressman Rob Wittman of Virginia. Gentlemen, thanks for being here. I want to start on this story that we just mentioned there and take a listen to the U.S. Attorney about this connection with the cartel in China.
These two groups have worked together.
Tonight in our Common Ground segment, we talked to two members of the House Armed Services Committee and the Select China Committees, Democrat Congressman Khanna of California and Republican Congressman Rob Wittman of Virginia. Gentlemen, thanks for being here. I want to start on this story that we just mentioned there and take a listen to the U.S. Attorney about this connection with the cartel in China.
These two groups have worked together to launder millions and millions of dollars in drug proceeds resulting from the sale of dangerous drugs in this country.
You know, Congressman Khanna, I started with you. Since January, there have been nearly 1.4 million illegal immigrants from 177 countries traveling through Mexico to the U.S., and you're seeing this more and more. 30,000 of them in recent months have come from China. How concerned are you about what we just heard from the U.S. Attorney and that flow?
Well, I'm very concerned, and it's good to be on with Representative Wittman. Our China Select Committee had a bipartisan hearing on fentanyl, on China funding, basically, fentanyl coming into the United States. It was one of the most emotional hearings. We had parents in the audience who were holding up pictures of their lost sons or daughters, and it's outrageous. And we need to be sanctioning the Chinese entities that are involved in any way funding drug gangs in Mexico or supplying fentanyl.
You know, Congressman Wittman, I know you two work across the aisle a lot, and you do try to find common ground on a lot of things, and we'll talk about another one in just a second. But the two parties couldn't be more different in how they talk about the border and security. Here's the former president and the current president.
Our country is under invasion. We should not be talking amnesty.
We can both secure the border and provide legal pathways to citizenship.
Is there a way to make these two parties come together? Democrats will point to the Senate bipartisan effort that failed, in part because they allege the former president didn't want it to succeed. How do you all work across the aisle on dealing with this?
To me, it's pretty simple. There are policies that we can put in place that have achieved that. The Remain in Mexico policy, making sure we secure the border, making sure, too, if people are seeking asylum in the United States, that they begin that process in their country of origin. We don't want them making that treacherous trip across Mexico, thousands of miles, at the mercy of coyotes and other exploiters there on their journey. Both parties know what needs to be done. It's a matter of how do we get to those basic elements, secure the border, make sure that people remain in their countries of origin pursuing asylum, and make sure, too, that we have some order before people even try to cross the border.
You know, you both talk about the situation with the China committee, the Select Committee, and there are different elements of this. Congressman Wittman, you deal with minerals policy, critical minerals, and not having a U.S. rely on that. A lot of things happening. And also on human rights. Congressman Khanna, The Guardian had a story that China has renamed hundreds of Uyghur villages and towns, according to human rights groups. About 630 communities have been renamed in this way by the government of China, mostly during the height of a crackdown on the Uyghurs that several governments and human rights bodies have called a genocide. How much of human rights is talked about on your Select Committee?
It was our first hearing of the committee. I mean, it is outrageous what is happening in Xinjiang. The Chinese Communist Party is trying to basically eliminate the Uyghurs' culture. We need to make sure that any entity that's involved in that human rights abuse is sanctioned, and that no products are coming in to the United States. One area, I think, common ground is that right now there's an exception. Up to $800 you can ship things into the United States without any tariffs or any sanction. We need to lower that exemption. Some of that is coming from places that have violated human rights.
And Congressman Wittman, we mentioned this minerals policy. There's a U.S. supply chain dependency that you all are trying to address.
We can build all the semiconductor plants we want, but if we don't have access to those base materials, we will not be independent from China. China today owns 100% of the world's source of gallium, a base component in synthetic silicon to make these semiconductors. We have to make sure that we are reliant on ourselves, not on others. China owns 16 of the 18 mines in Africa. They are the worst environmental violators, the worst human rights violators there. We cannot keep that going by buying those elements from Chinese companies that are mining in Africa. Let's get back to producing our own rare earth elements so we're not dependent on China.
And quickly for both of you, as you get closer to an election, oftentimes it's tougher to do things together across the aisle. Common ground is not that popular as you get closer and closer to November. Is that fair, Congressman Khanna?
Of course, it's tough in an election year, but one of the things I respect about Representative Whitman and frankly on the committee is even when we disagree, we do so civilly, we do so recognizing we're coming from different perspectives. And one thing that the committee is unified on is America needs to lead the 21st century. We need to dominate technologically. We need to have military superiority. We need to prevent Xi Jinping from going into Taiwan. So there's a lot that still unites us as Americans, and that's why I've enjoyed serving on this committee with Representative Whitman.